The first kind of nonlinear price discrimination is the quantity discount. Here is a set of different prices for different sizes of packages of LED bulbs I collected from Amazon.com. These 6-pack LED bulbs cost $20.39, or it's about $3.40 each. So if you want to have cheaper LED bulbs, you buy this 6-pack and each of them cost you only $3.40. But they also sell a single pack. This one actually cost $10.75 each, and that's more than $6 more expensive than the bulb in the 6-pack. So in this example, what we see is that when you have quantity discount, the average price per unit in a larger size package is cheaper than a smaller size package. Now, let's think about a simpler example. Say I have a 2-unit package sell for $16, and then another size 4-unit package sells for $26. What I'm interested in is the extra 2 units in the 4-unit pack. What does it cost? If you use $26 minus $16, you got $10. So if you switch from the 2-unit package to the 4-unit package, you will pay another $10. And what you will get is 2 more units. So each unit actually costs $5 in the 4-unit package. If you price the first 2 units in the 2-unit pack at $16, it means each of the 1 unit in the 2-unit package cost $8 each. And then the next 2 units in the 4-unit package cost $5 each. The average price in the 4-unit package is $6.50. If you use $26 divided by 4, you get $6.50. However, if you just consider the price on the next 2 units in the 4-unit package, it's actually $5 each. In this picture, we want to show the firms with market power can separate consumers by their willingness to pay, by the shape of different demand curves of the consumers. And the firm with market power can use quantity discount to let the consumers self-select into buying different sizes of packages. Here, the first customer has a very steep demand curve. What I assume is that for the first 2 units, the willingness to pay for this first customer is much higher than the unit price, $8. But for the next 2 units, this customer's willingness to pay fall below $5 very fast. So this first customer only buy the 2-unit package and not interested in the 4-unit package. The second customer has a very different demand curve. You can say it's more elastic, but basically it has a low valuation or low willingness to pay than the first customer on the first 2 units. But for the third and the fourth units, the second customer has a little bit higher willingness to pay than the unit price, $5 in the 4-unit package. If you are very good at geometry, then you will be able to see that the area of this little white triangle is the same as the area of this little green triangle. It basically means the total willingness to pay on the 4 units equal to $26 for this second customer. Any customer with a demand curve that is higher than this second customer may purchase the 4-unit package as well. So this second customer is a marginal case. This second customer barely have a total willingness to pay for the 4 units for $26, and the 4 units does charge $26. So actually, in this case, the firm with market power completely extracted the total willingness to pay from this second customer. And that's exactly what the firms with market powers would like to do. They want to extract consumer surplus, convert that into their profit or producer surplus. Here, what we are looking at is that for the second customer, this little white triangle provide a part of the consumer surplus that can subsidize the loss in this little green triangle. The price the producer want to charge on the first unit actually is higher than the willingness to pay. But that kind of loss for the second customer can be subsidized by this consumer surplus contained in this little white triangle. This example shows how a firm with monopoly power use quantity discount, different prices for different sizes, to attract different types of consumers, to let them self-select into buying different package sizes. The price discrimination story is still the same. This smaller size package extracts a consumer surplus from the high willingness to pay on the first 2 units, or say a smaller quantity. And the larger size, the 4-unit package, attracts consumers who has lower willingness to pay on the initial quantity, but they still have a rather high willingness to pay on subsequent units. In this example, this larger package size increased the sales by the firm with market power, also the profit. Here we can actually see that the willingness to pay on the 4th unit is still higher than the marginal cost. So the firm actually generates more producer surplus from selling this larger quantity to the second group, even though this second kind of consumers have somewhat lower willingness to pay on the initial units. The first group of customers, they do want a little quantity of these goods, but they don't need extra units. They have no use for the extra units. That's why their willingness to pay decline very fast after once they get the initial units they need. This is how a firm with market power use quantity discount to let consumers self-select into buying different sizes of packages and extract consumer surplus from both kinds of consumers. A second kind of nonlinear price discrimination is called block pricing. In panel A and panel B, we have the same kind of consumers. They all have this identical demand curve in the market. It hits the price axis at $90 and the quantity axis at 90 units. In panel A, the first block for units between 0 and 20, per unit price is $70. The second block is for units beyond 20 units. The unit price is $50. According to this demand curve, at $50 per unit, the customers would like to buy 40 units per person. So the total expenditure is 20 times 70, that is 1400, and another 1000 is 20 times 50. So the total expenditure is 1400 plus 1000 is 2400. The marginal cost for this firm is $30 per unit, Because it's a constant, we can also view it as the average variable cost. So the total variable cost here is 30 times 40, 1200. Then the producer surplus is this area B for the firm with market power. That's $1,200. It's 2,400 minus 1,200. And from this picture, we can see that the consumer surplus is the area A $200 plus the area C $200. So the total consumer surplus under block pricing is $400. And there is this area D, the deadweight loss of $200. In panel B, we are considering a monopoly who just set a single price, or say the uniform pricing monopoly. The quantity where the marginal revenue meets the marginal cost is 30 units, and at that 30 units quantity demanded, the price is $60 per unit. So the total expenditure by a representative consumer in this market is 60 times 30, $1,800. And the variable cost for the monopoly here is 30 times 30, that's $900. So the producer surplus for this monopoly is $1,800 minus $900. This area F is still $900. The consumer surplus is this area E of $450 under uniform pricing, and the area G is this deadweight loss of $450. So if we compare the welfare effect of block pricing, we see that using block pricing, the firm with market power extract more consumer surplus. The consumer surplus left in this block pricing market is only $400, but in the uniform pricing market, it's $450. And the firm using block pricing actually extract more consumer surplus and make more producer surplus. Here, under block pricing, the producer surplus for the firm is $1,200, and using uniform pricing, the firm only get $900 in producer surplus. Also, we see that under block pricing, the deadweight loss is smaller, only $200, but under uniform pricing, the deadweight loss is $450. The reason for all this result is because, again, we see that with price discrimination, a firm can extract higher willingness to pay for lower quantity and then extend the sales by charging lower prices on subsequent quantities. So they extract more money from the consumers and make more sales for larger quantity. In these two channels, they bring in more producer surplus and extract more consumer surplus. In this picture, if we want to compare the block pricing result, so-called second-degree price discrimination, with uniform pricing and the first-degree price discrimination, or the perfect price discrimination, we'll see that the uniform pricing gives the smallest producer surplus, and here actually the deadweight loss is the largest for uniform pricing. Under second-degree price discrimination, there's higher producer surplus, smaller deadweight loss, and in practice, the consumer surplus left under the second-degree price discrimination should be smaller than the uniform pricing, because you can imagine the firm with market power can set many different blocks to extract the consumer surplus. And then if the firm can perform the first degree or the perfect price discrimination, all the consumer surplus will be extracted and there will be no deadweight loss. Total economic surplus is transferred to the firm with market power, become producer surplus. After discussing various ways of setting up price discrimination, The next several pricing strategies explore different ways to extract consumer surplus. Here, the first one we will talk about is the so-called two-part pricing. First, we assume all the consumers in the market are identical, or say we only face one kind of customer. And the result from this two-part pricing, when you have homogeneous customers, is similar or actually exactly as perfect price discrimination, meaning that we will set up a excess fee that extract the complete consumer surplus from a customer. And when you have this kind of demand curve, identical demand curve, here the inverse demand curve is P equal to 10 minus 2 times Q. Q is the quantity a consumer will buy, and the firm has a marginal cost equal to 2. And what we are going to see is that the profit maximizing two-part pricing is to set up the excess fee as this consumer surplus, the area below the demand curve, above the marginal cost curve, up to this quantity where the marginal cost curve equal to the demand curve. And then we charge a per unit price of the dollar amount for the marginal cost. So the per unit price will equal to the marginal cost. In that way, we will be able to use the so-called two-part pricing. One part is the excess fee, the other part is the per unit charge. This two-part pricing will help us to extract all the consumer surplus in this green triangle. In that sense, the two-part pricing is very close to perfect price discrimination when you have just one kind, completely the same customers. Okay, let's look at this calculation here. At price equal to the marginal cost 2, we will have 2 for the price. So 2Q here, I have moved it to the left-hand side of the equation. It's 10 minus the P, which is 2. We move this P to the right-hand side of this equation. So 2Q equal to 8, which means Q star equal to 4. So 4 will be the base of this green triangle. Our goal is to calculate the area of this green triangle. So we are going to use the base 4 times the height and divide that by 2. That's the formula for the area of a triangle. The height here is this intercept of the inverse demand function 10 minus the per unit price or the marginal cost 2. So the height is 8. 10 minus 2 equal to 8. 8 times this quantity Q star here 4. 8 times 4 is 32. To get the area of the green triangle, we need to divide the base times the height by 2. So the base is 4, height is 8. 32 divided by 2 will be $16. So the excess fee the firm with market power is going to charge will be $16. The total revenue will be the excess fee plus the revenue from per unit charge. We are selling 4 units, each unit for $2, totally $8. So $8 plus $16, we have $24 as the total revenue. In this picture, what we are going to discuss is when you charge the consumer the total consumer surplus, this light blue triangle, as the excess fee and price the product at the marginal cost, that give the firm with market power the highest possible producer surplus or highest possible profit. Here, first, let's look at what we get if we do that. If we price the per unit price at the marginal cost here is 10, and from this demand function, the quantity sold will be 70. So what will be the excess fee? Quantity is 70, that's the base. The height of the triangle here is 80 minus 10, another 70. 70 is the base. The height is also 70. To get the area of this light blue triangle, we need to use 70, the base times the height 70, divided by 2. That's 4900 divided by 2. We have 2450. So that will be the producer surplus. This is the area below the demand curve and above the marginal cost curve. Under perfect competition, this will be the consumer surplus. But when we are doing this two-part pricing, we extract the complete consumer surplus. Now this area A become the producer surplus. What if instead of setting the unit price equal to the marginal cost, we charge a unit price that is higher than the marginal cost by $10? So we charge per unit price at $20, and the consumer surplus that can be extracted now become $1,800, which is 60 times 60, 80 to 20, there's a 60 is the height. 60 times 60 divided by 2, it's 3,600 divided by 2 is $1,800. So the excess fee become $1,800, and we do bring more per unit profit from setting a higher price than the marginal cost. That is 60 times the $10 margin here will be $600. So the total producer surplus with a unit price higher than the marginal cost is $24,000. That is $50 less than the $24.50 producer surplus when we just charge the complete area of the consumer surplus as the excess fee and set the price equal to $10, the marginal cost. The reason for the smaller producer surplus is because of this deadweight loss of $50. The consumers no longer want to buy 70 units when the price is $20 per unit. They only want to buy 60 units. So there's 10 units not sold, but the consumer actually would like to pay a price that is higher than $10. With an excess fee of the complete consumer surplus, we do extract this little triangle here. But with a unit price that is higher than the marginal cost, we can no longer extract this little triangle here. We can only extract the $600 on the quantity sold and this $1,800 in the consumer surplus as the excess fee. The problem is that when you price the product above the marginal cost, the consumer no longer want to buy 70 units, and that reduces the total available consumer surplus to extract. When you set the price equal to the marginal cost, you have a consumer surplus of 2,450. That's all the money can be extracted from the consumer. But when you set the price equal to 20 per unit, all the consumer surplus that can be extracted is only 2,400. That's why if we have identical customers in the market and the firm has market power, can do two-part pricing, we simply set the excess fee as the complete consumer surplus that can be extracted and price our product at the marginal cost. The two-part pricing is more complicated when we have different kind of consumers in the market. Here, Valerie has a lower demand curve than Neil. Neil's demand curve lies above Valerie's. And if we think about the complete consumer surplus we can extract from Valerie, we have 70 times 70 divided by 2, that will be 2450. For Neil, we have 90 times 100 minus 10, the height is 90 again, and 90 times 90 is 8100 divided by 2, the consumer surplus here is 4050. So the firm faces a trade-off. If the firm want Valerie in and there's no way to charge Neil a different access fee, the firm at most can only charge $24.50 as the access fee to Neil. And there is consumer surplus left unextracted from Neil, because Neil's total available consumer surplus to extract is $40.50, but the most we can do is to charge $24.50 to Neil, because there's no way you can charge Valerie and Neil different access fee. Now, one way to change this story is to increase the per unit price. If we set the per unit price above the marginal cost at $20, then we can only charge Valerie an access fee of $1,800, but we also make a profit of $600 from the per unit sales. The deadweight loss for Valerie is $50, and we will have the same set of prices for Neil. The access fee will be set at $1,800 because it's less than the available consumer surplus, so Neil will be happy to pay that. The price will be $20, but at a $20 price, Neil will purchase 80 units. So on top of the marginal cost, there's $10 margin from the per unit sales, so 80 units bring in $800 in producer surplus. This $800 plus the $600 from the per unit sales from Valerie, we have $1,400 in per unit sales, and we have collected $1,800 each from both Valerie and Neil, so that's $3,600. The total producer surplus here is $3,600 plus $1,400, the $1,400 from the $600 and $800 on per unit sales. We have $5,000 total in producer surplus. And this $5,000 is better than if we charge $24.50, the complete consumer surplus on Valerie. If we do that, we charge $24.50 on Valerie and $24.50 on Neil, and both of them pay the marginal cost as the per unit price. So in that case, the per unit sales doesn't bring in any additional producer surplus because the price equal to the marginal cost. And all we have as producer surplus is two excess fees, that is $24.50 times 2. That is $4,900, $100 less than if we raise the per unit price and only charge $1,800 for access fee. That brings us $5,000. But we reduce the per unit price and charge the complete consumer surplus from Valerie $24.50. We only have $4,900 as producer surplus. But if we raise the per unit price and reduce the access fee, we will have $5,000. So in this example, we see that when you have different consumers, they have different demand curves, it can be beneficial to increase your per unit price and reduce the access fee so that we can increase the producer surplus. When we cannot charge different access fee to Valerie and Neil, we use the smaller excess fee to bring in various demand. However, we need to compensate the smaller excess fee by increasing the per unit price. Because the excess fee paid by NIO is much smaller than the extractable consumer surplus from NIO, we can actually extract more consumer surplus from NIO by using a higher per unit price. That is mainly because NIO has this very high demand curve. With a little bit higher per unit price, NIO still will purchase a rather large quantity. And that means we bring in additional producer surplus from the extra quantity NIO is buying. Then, as long as the larger quantity purchased by NIO provide enough producer surplus that can compensate the loss of excess fee when we try to include value in our customer base, it's profitable to set a small excess fee according to various demand curve, but charge a per unit price that is higher than the marginal cost. In this way, we can increase the profit for the firm with market power or increase the producer surplus for this firm, then price the excess fee just according to the complete consumer surplus of the low demand curve and the per unit price at the marginal cost. So when we have different kind of consumers in the market, the two-part pricing may charge a relatively small excess fee, but the per unit price will be above the marginal cost, so that help the firm with market power to maximize profit.